Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 140 of the Terminal City FC podcast, part of the Area 51 Sports Network. Josh Ray joined alongside Nathan Durek. Not joined alongside Nathan Durek. He's still on vacation, but he came back this morning, actually, but obviously not available to do this podcast. So joining me is Felipe Vallejo, AFTN, Northern Tribune, his own podcast, Coast to Coast. Felipe, how you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Always happy to jump on the show, and hopefully, I do a good job as a substitute for Nathan.
Don't worry, Nathan will be back next week. So Whitecaps, that's like 4 wins out of their last five, two straight wins. We'll start with last Saturday's win in St. Louis. 4-1, dominating performance. Brian White with a brace. Even got to see Ryan Raposo and Fafa Pico get on the score sheet. But despite not having the most possession, the Whitecaps managed to blow St. Louis out of the water.
Yeah, it was a kind of a crazy match to watch. I mean, I think we can sort of expect that now between the Whitecaps and St. Louis, because in the last four matches, 19 goals have been scored between
Yep.
them, which is a crazy amount, almost 5 goals per game on average there. Yeah, so I guess it should have been coming to see so many goals in the game, but yeah, it was still quite surprising to win 4-1 away from home. Whitecaps historically haven't been that great away from home, but this season they're on course to be probably one of their best away seasons if they can continue their good form. And this was a massive win, 4-1. And like you mentioned, Brian White with a brace, and Fafa Pico, he's been bagging in goals and assists ever since the rumors started swirling around him. So yeah, really convincing performance overall. Only really one blip, like a 10-15 minute kind of blip in the first half where St. Louis obviously got that goal, but afterwards it was sort of one-way traffic.
Yeah, just again, a really solid performance by Vancouver. Other than that one goal by Borison, I believe, 27th minute. Yoey Tako probably should have handled that one better through his legs, but
Mm.
it didn't matter in the end because the Whitecaps just kept pushing and pushing. And despite having like 10 minutes of stoppage time or whatever it was, they managed to carve out a 4-1 win. And yes, good to see Fafa Pico get on the score sheet. And it's kind of ironic that ever since Tom Bogert put that report out, but him wanting to go back east, he's been scoring goals. Though he could have had two in this game, but first one was called off for offside, but the second one obviously did count. And just gotta give plaudits to Ryan Gauld on that goal. The way he just tracked back and found Fafa Pico sprinting. That's what he does. That's Ryan Gauld in a clip. If you want to show a casual what he can do.
Yeah, that's literally Mr. Working Class MVP there. I know that was a funny name last season from the Whitecaps PR, but it's actually pretty true in the way that he plays. It's a 90-second minute. You don't need to necessarily go in and make a dashing run to the opponent, slide tackle, intercept them, win back the ball. Basically, like at the halfway line. At that point, you can just sit back, you can just defend, see out the game. You can be more casual about it. But the fact that he's still willing to put a shift in a 90-second minute, having run all game, shows how committed he is to the team and to the way that they want to play with intensity, with high pressure and everything. And he kind of embodies that. And then it goes to show his defensive work rate immediately to his creativity by that superb through ball right in between the defense for Fafa to kind of latch onto and go and put away. Yeah, it's like you mentioned. That's Ryan Gauld in a clip right there. That's Ryan Gauld to a T. And it's great to see that more people are starting to find out about him now that he's an MLS All Star and he's going to do the All Star Challenge and everything. More eyes are going to be on him, and hopefully they get to see more of maybe just a glimpse of what we get to see, and we get sort of treated to see week in and week out with him.
Yeah, and since we covered the Whitecaps, we watch him pretty much on a regular basis. But for people outside of MLS, this is why Whitecaps fans, Whitecaps media have been advocating this guy for MVP votes, for All Star nods, which he got now, and goes to show that even when they're up like by two or three, he's still committed to giving everything on the pitch because that's his best trait, his work rate. And again, this game was pretty fun if you're a Whitecaps fan, 4-1 win, but they had Wednesday's game against Sporting Kansas City. We'll talk more about that. So I don't know about you, but I thought that was the best half the Whitecaps played all season, that first half, but it could have been so much more.
Yeah, yeah, it should have been so much more.
Yeah, should have.
Because of the it was like Vanny said afterwards when we were in the press conference. That was champagne football. That was champagne football from them, and we've mentioned that, to be fair. Like I mentioned that a few times with the Caps, but I feel like I wait until it's a really good performance to say that, and that was a really good first half performance. SKC. This isn't the same SKC that was at the beginning of the season that were like winless in like 8. This was SKC that in the last, 3 of the last 4 games
They won,
they've
yeah.
been winning. They won. They beat Dallas twice. They beat San Jose. Yes, maybe not the most incredible of teams. They're also kind of down there in the gutter with them, but still they went into this match with some confidence. They were the home side. This was going to be a tough match for the Whitecaps, but it made it feel like the Whitecaps were the home side in the first half, and it made it feel like the Whitecaps, were the team that were vying for top 4, and SKC were still sort of rooted to the bottom of the table. It was, a golfing class between the two sides. I'm pretty sure, because I was doing the stats for this game for the Whitecaps. I'm pretty sure that their only shot on target, or their first shot on target, came in like the 44th minute for SKC. That's
Yeah, and that
how.
was right at tackle,
Yeah, it was
from
right
what I
down the
remember.
middle, just like a shot from wide. It was like a completely non-chance, as low XG as you can possibly get. So that was how dominant the Whitecaps were in that first half. And if it was only a little bit cleaner in the final ball and the final product, it could have easily been 2 or 3 nil. And I think it deservedly should have been two
Oh
or
yeah,
three
should have.
nil because of the way that they were playing. And then there's always that danger. I have it all the time, that anxiety of as soon as you go into halftime and a match that you should be about 3 goals up and you've scored one or you haven't scored any, that kind of anxiety starts to seep in of, oh, are we gonna throw it away? And then conversely, the opposition got to get confidence of like, okay, we got away with that, now let's make sure that we go and kind of put a staple into the match and kind of show for ourselves. And that's what SKC did, because at the beginning of the second half, it was for the first 15, 20 minutes, I'd say, it was
Yep.
pretty much all SKC putting on the pressure. So it was no surprise that they got the equalizer.
Yeah, no surprise at all. And SKC in the first half had trouble getting up the pitch. They were suffocating thanks to the Whitecaps press. And yeah, other than that shot on tackle late in the first half and that one corner, and I believe that one chance where Shallowy just was forced to run out of bounds, they didn't generate anything. And props to the Whitecaps for their press, for the way they moved the ball. But again, that final pass, final third, could have been 3-0 if not for the offside rule. And if the passes just were a second or two earlier,
Yeah.
because
And
both goals had pretty good buildups.
yeah, and it's unfortunately, the fault of both of that was on Ali, and much was made of Ali's return after his really impressive performance against Uruguay with Canada, and so like there was a lot of hype around him, and he started well. He kind of brought that energy, that spark to the side, started running at his man, the kind of directness that sort of has been missing from the Whitecaps without him, that kind of bravery to go 1v1. But then when it came to his actual final product of the final pass, he was just half a second too late. He was a little bit sloppy. He had that chance where he was basically found in the box right in front of the keeper. And I think he was sort of caught between two minds, or he didn't get the ball cleanly because it just kind of bobbled off his foot into the hands of Tim Melia, when it could have easily been a shot or a pass across goal. And it should have been a goal from that great opportunity. So yeah, a couple of it's fine details that he kind of messed up on, and unfortunately, it's those little fine details that prevented from the Whitecaps getting more goals than what they ended up getting.
Yeah, and Vanni Sertini in the press conference, when I asked him about Ali, he said, yeah, his final pass could have been better, but overall it was a positive performance from him. And good to see him come back just a few days after his performance against Uruguay. And I think he looked really comfortable up top with Gall and White, and that's probably something we could see in the foreseeable future. But the Whitecaps did score in the first half, though. It was the man who won the Golden Boot at the Euros. I don't know how, but the Whitecaps signed him. Own goal. Went off Robert Volador, which I wrote that he sounds like a fantasy novel character, and he
Yeah, you're not wrong.
deflected it into his own net. Originally thought it was Brian White's goal, but Brian White even knew that it was an own goal. But you
Yeah.
take all the goals you can get.
Yeah, and you could see from his reaction, he shouted some things that I won't repeat on here. For those that can read lips, you could very clearly see his frustration on the goal. He was still smiling, obviously, because the Whitecaps score, but you could see his frustration for the fact that he was just a half second away from adding to his tally there. If it wasn't for Vela there sliding in at the last second, but yeah, really well work team goal. Great, fantastic 1-2 between Brian White and Ryan Gauld. A lovely layoff for Brian White to Ryan Gauld. And Ryan Gauld, ever the selfless man, instead of firing it towards goal, takes a touch, kind of attracts the defenders and the goalie thinking that he's going to try something. And instead he just lays it back off for his teammates. And what should have been another Brian Ryan special ended up being an own goal for Volo there. And but it was still a goal, and they all count and they all matter. So it didn't matter how it went in. It was just the fact that the Whitecaps finally went 1-0 up.
Yeah, and beautiful given goal, kind of like a hockey 1-2 pass between Ryan Gauld and Brian White. And too bad it didn't count, because that would have made the highlight reels for weeks. But as we mentioned, second half, there was that anxiety, that fear, that trepidation, whatever you want to call it, that SKC would get back into the game, and they made 3 subs at halftime. And Whitecaps were kind of sleepy at the back. There were some pretty sloppy back passes, and Laborda at one instant passed it back to Yohei Takaoka. Miscommunication there, but luckily Takaoka realized at the very last second before disaster struck. And then, of course, SKC got the equalizer just like 5 minutes after that, off a rebound from William Agata in the 69th minute.
Yeah, that was a really tough one to watch. I mean, the entire period was tough to watch because you could sort of see that it was coming, and you could see the nervousness in the back line, and that's always a bad sign when you see defenders start to second guess, start to hesitate, start to be a little bit panicky. They kind of make erratic decisions, and there's that element of miscommunication. And like you said, that back pass that Takaoka had to realize at the last second before it kind of went into really dangerous areas. That's kind of a sign of, okay, we need to settle this ship and quickly before it gets settled by the other team. Unfortunately, they weren't able to respond quick enough, and it got settled by the opposition team. Just it's kind of a little bit of a sloppy goal to concede. I mean, there's not much that you could do. I mean, Takaoka saves the initial shot from Saloy, that kind of outside of the boot. Trivella, you would maybe think you want to push it into less dangerous areas. You want to, might push it wide, or might want to push it in behind. But it's split second things. You're just reacting at that point as a goalkeeper, and then nobody's there to really clean up. And then Agata just is able to sweep it in.
Yeah, and Agata found the blind spot behind Bjorn and Gudvik in the zonal marking system, and just pounced on the rebound. Nothing really Tackle could have done about that. He had to be superhuman to stop the rebound. But I think that goal woke the Whitecaps up. Like, it was pretty much, okay, they tied it up. We haven't had a good half. Let's get going here. And thankfully, they did get going, because after that, we slowly started to see some of that ball movement from the first half, especially after Sebastian Berhalter and Fafa Pico came on. And everything about that goal was perfect. The pass from Berhalter and the header from Fafa Pico, just perfect.
Yeah, that was a sublime goal. Honestly, that delivery. I know Vanny said afterwards that it was like a David Beckham-esque ball, but it really was. It really pulled it out of the locker. Just the way that he swung that cross towards the back post. From the angle that we were looking at it, it was like the perfect angle to see the trajectory of the ball just kind of curve all the way. And then Fafa, I mean, you're not going to get a sweeter cross than that, sweeter service than that. He basically could do nothing but score there. Just had to get his head on it straight on, and then there's absolutely no chance for Tim Millie. I'm also really happy for Fafa because I think it was like 2 minutes earlier he got a really good cross from Luis Martins on the left that he just had to put anything on it, anything at all on it, and he was unable to do it. He kind of like
Half a second too
just
late.
went past, yeah, just a half second too late, just went past like the side of his body. I don't know if he was trying to shoulder it or chest it, but he got his angles just about wrong, and it just swept past him in what was a golden opportunity. So I'm really happy that he made up for it really quickly afterwards. And it's something that Fafa likes to do as well, is that he doesn't kind of give up if he messes up an opportunity. Because against St. Louis too, he could have had a hat trick with the chances that he had. The goal that went in that got chalked off offside, he had a chance earlier, basically in the same position on the left hand side, 1-on-1 against Berkey, but he shot too central and Berkey saved it. But he still kept going. And he got his goal at the end. And it's the same thing in this game where he kind of just he misses a chance, he gets frustrated, but he kind of puts his head down, keeps working, and if the opportunity presents itself again, this time he won't miss. And that's what I really like about Fafa, is that he's just always determined to keep going and keep fighting, which is, for a player of his experience and a player of his quality, it's something you come to expect, but it's always nice to be able to have that with the Whitecaps. And yeah, hopefully, now with the form he's showing, I think a lot of fans, maybe before when he wasn't doing so much, would have been happy with him leaving, freeing up some cap space and some roster space. But now with the form he's doing, I think most people would be happy for him to stay.
Yeah, I mean, I would too, especially with he's scoring goals and he's returned to the Fafa we've seen before his back injury, so to speak. And I'm glad he's done well. And yeah, thankfully he did score that goal because he had a wide open chance just 2 minutes earlier. And I asked Ranko Veselinovic after the match, like, how does a team just stay focused, especially when having the lead? And he said communication, pretty much. But they have to talk with one another and just maintain their focus. And I believe that's what happened after they conceded the first goal, the SKC goal, and they look focused. And another big 3 points. And as it stands right now, 38 points for Vancouver, fourth in the MLS Western Conference. Though, thanks to goal differential, they're ahead of Colorado, who has the same amount of points, but they have games in hand on pretty much everyone around them.
Yeah, they're in a really good position right now after these 2 matches. And I mean, they're in a really good position right now for the rest of the season as well, because, they have 11 games left. Out of the 11 games left, 7 are at home. And, I mean, on paper, that's a really good, end stretch. Obviously, the Whitecaps, for some reason, have been sort of better away from home than at home. At home, it's been actually a little bit more of a struggle.
Yeah.
But on paper, that still should be, be helpful towards them to not having to go away from home. They can be, as Vanny would say, they're more in charge of their destinies when they're at home, because they can sort of dictate play, because they're the ones that are sort of have the impetus to dictate how the game is going to go out. So I think that's they're in a really good position. And after that kind of dip that they had a few weeks back, where they kind of were, I think they went winless in 4 and 5, and they started to kind of plummet down into 8th, 9th, 10th. It looked a little bit testy, but I'm really glad that they were, they managed to bounce back and kind of have a really good account for themselves. And people are starting to take notice again that Vancouver is a side that it's like, wait a minute, they have something about them. And the fact that we're 4th in the table, they're 6 points behind 3rd, but with a game in hand on Salt Lake, who are in 3rd, and for some teams around us like Colorado, SKC, I'm pretty sure, and LA Galaxy, those are teams that have played 25 games. We've only played 23, so 2 games in hand on some of the rivals around us. So yeah, it's really good form right now. But the game against SKC was important, and the game on tomorrow actually, against Houston is going to be huge too, because back-to-back games, back-to-back home games before the little break for Leagues Cup and the friendly against Wrexham. You want to finish off strong so that when you get back to the MLS, because I'm pretty sure the first game after Leagues Cup is LAFC, which is going
It
to be
is,
a
yes.
huge match at home. You need to end off on the right note. So yeah, tomorrow's game is massive for the Whitecaps as well.
Yeah, and goes to show that form again is important, not just in MLS but in any league. Like you can go on a losing streak and you can be out of the playoff picture. You can go on a winning streak and be in the top four. That's how tight the Western Conference, in particular in MLS, is. And Ranko Veselinovic said after the SKC game, it was the Portland game that they felt was a low point in the season, and they all had a big like meeting and talk about what they could do better. And so far, it has worked. So Houston tomorrow, and I'm just looking here. They're eighth in the table, 9-7-7, 34 points, just 4 points behind Vancouver. And just looking at their last match, it was a 1-0 win away to the San Jose Earthquakes. I mean, yeah, it's San Jose, but still a win for them. And they've been kind of an up and down team. Like in their last 5 games, they've won 2 games, no, 3 games, but lost 1 and drew 1.
Yeah, they're a team that I think a lot of people would be mistaken to underestimate because
Yeah,
yeah, they're eighth in the table and they didn't have the best of starts. But lately they've actually been doing decently well where, in their last I think 8 matches, they've only lost 1, but 4 of them were draws. They had 3 consecutive 2-2 draws in June, which is pretty funny.
yeah,
And but they're a team that, they're one of the most possession based teams in the league. I'm pretty sure they're second behind Columbus Crew. And so they're a team that really likes to get, on the ball. It's kind of like similar to LA Galaxy situation where that they're going to want to be very ball heavy. And so it's important for them to be able to break up play so that Houston Dynamo don't get too comfortable because they're hard to break down because you don't get the ball that much. So it's going to be even more important for this game for the Whitecaps to actually be clinical when they have those chances. That means the final ball has to be perfect. The actual shot on net has to be good enough so that when you're not going to get that many opportunities, even though they're the home team, they're not going to get that many opportunities. So they got to make sure that when the chances come, they have to put them away if they want to get a result against Houston.
yeah. And Houston in their last game, 64% possession versus San Jose's 36. Yes, I know it's San Jose. So that goes to show how heavy they are when it comes to possession. And that midfield, I think, of including Hector Herrera and Carrasquilla,
Mm.
they two most dangerous players in MLS, especially Carrasquilla, because he is just a ball-winning defensive box-to-box type of player. And it should be the Whitecaps should be smart with their possession and again smarter in the final third to make Houston get on the ropes or have their backs against the wall. And one thing I learned last night when researching for this game that since these two teams first met in MLS, the away team has never won a game against each other.
Really?
Yeah,
I did not know that.
which is kind of hard to believe.
So the
And
home side has always won. Well, that's in our favor then. If the home side always or never loses, at least. I guess they don't always win, but they never lose.
yeah, which I find bizarre. I guess the travel distance kind of has something to do with it, but still, history is on the Whitecaps side. But of course, history can be changed any moment. And the Whitecaps are at home. There'll be a Saturday night. It'll be another warm Saturday night. I'll be at BC Place. Nathan will be there. You'll be there. And hopefully the Whitecaps can get another 3 points before the League's Cup break. Because if they are in a top 5 position heading into the break, it gives confidence when they come back, like Felipe said earlier. So, yep, Whitecaps, Houston Dynamo on Saturday. And little Whitecaps tidbits here. So Tom Bogert revealed that the new MLS roster rules. So teams can have 3 designated players plus 3 under 22 players or young GPs, or 2 designated players plus 4 under 22s, and $2 million in additional GAM.
I like it. I'll be honest. I really like those
Me too.
changes because it gives more opportunity for recruitment. It gives some flexibility too, where not everybody has to kind of go in the same sort of direction for how they want to, construct their squad. I think that you know it kind of rewards sometimes maybe not going the flashiest of routes in terms of getting the three DPs, maybe going two DPs, the four under 22 initiatives that can still be really good players. I mean, I've always said under 22 initiatives is basically it's basically a young DP spot in a sense.
That's what it is.
It's essentially just a young DP spot without it being officially a young DP spot. So it doesn't have to necessarily be the less flashiest. I mean, on paper it does, but then the $2 million GAM, I think, is something that could be really huge for teams that might want to focus on not just bringing stars in to boost their profile as well, but also look to bring people in as depth pieces. Because in a salary cap system, you can only have so many good players on your roster. So you have to make sure that each one that you bring in counts. It's like a proper player that you can rely on. You can't have sort of these throwaway players that are like actually not good enough. They're there if you need cover, but it's kind of like third or fourth string. You can't really have that in MLS because you only have so many senior roster spots and so much salary cap. So having that extra game, I think, will really help teams and being able to bring in some depth pieces, with the added money and kind of bolster the squad in different ways. So I really do like that it kind of gives a bit more flexibility in the squad structure. And the other rule that is added too is that the MLS teams now get more money for selling players as well. They can convert up to $3 million from their transfer sales into GAM, where before it was like 1.2 million, 1.25 million, something like that. So more than doubled the amount, which is again really good because that kind of incentivizes being able to sell on players and then getting a good chunk of that to be able to reinvest into the squad for GAM money. So yeah, really good positives I think from these changes. And now the real question is what the Whitecaps are going to do, though I think we both know a little bit more in the direction that they're going to go in.
Yeah, and I like it because again, it gives some flexibility, especially for teams that don't have a higher revenue or payroll. And some teams like to be more methodical or moneyball than spend money on flashy players. So I think most teams would take the second one, the U22 initiative player model. And Bogert reported they have to declare which path they will choose by August 14th. And Axel Schuster kind of hinted, I believe it was yesterday or the day before on Sportsnet's morning show. He said that the main focus will be depth in this transfer window and looking ahead to players for next year because of immigration rules and visas and all that. And it's all very complicated. So he's kind of hinted they'll take the second rule way, the U22 initiative player model, and Vanni Sartini has as well in the past. So we'll see what the Whitecaps will do with the transfer window. And if it were up to me, I would have taken use the third DP spot because we said time and time again, one more difference maker could really take this team to new heights and show that they're serious about contending for an MLS Cup.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's something that people have been crying out for years. Honestly, I mean, ever since even when the Whitecaps had like Cavallini as a DP alongside Kuas and Ryan Gull, they were like, we want an actual DP, and then Cordova came in, and that wasn't really going, and so it's been like a couple of years now of like that third DP spot not really being properly occupied. And you got to be realistic with the Whitecaps. You're not going to go out and sign like a Marco Royce like LA Galaxy are doing, because that's just not the model that they're gonna go for. I think they're probably going to go down the route of 2DP and 4 U22, especially since I'm pretty sure David Caicedo, whose loan ends at the end of this month, we don't have no idea if he's coming back or not. They Junior have a permanent buy clause at the end of the loan if they so wish. But right now he's not really getting picked all that much, even though he had a really good end to the Clausura season last season. So don't really know what his situation is, but he still counts as a U22 spot. So that means that if he continues to count for a U22 spot, then there will still be 3 more U22 spots that the Whitecaps will be able to take, depending on if they want to convert Pedro Vite into something else. But I think that's the eventual route that the Whitecaps are going to take, and I wouldn't be surprised if this transfer window goes by without even occupying any of the other EU22 initiatives, let alone another DP spot. But it kind of obviously people are going to be disappointed because people are like, we're doing really well. We could do better if we have that kind of extra star power. But at the same time, I don't really know if that's going to be a realistic option. I'd be super surprised, if we have another transfer, secondary transfer window in the sense of last year where they ended and they got Junior Hoylett, Richie Larea, and Sam Adekugbe, which was like a superstar end of day, final transfer deadline day kind of opportunity there for them. I'd be really surprised if we get another one of those. But I think, yeah, maybe if we want to move in the right direction in the next step, something like that might be necessary.
Yeah, and I have nothing against the second model, and like U22s are still valuable. Look at Pedro de la Vega for Seattle Sounders. Yeah, I know he had injuries and he's slowly starting to get to form, but this guy looks like a difference maker for Seattle, and I believe is one of the reasons why Seattle has turned their form around in the last few months. But again, it just feels like some people when we talk about the Whitecaps, they say, "Oh, there's no ambition. They won't spend." Well, you don't need like a superstar player, like some big name to win in MLS. Look at Columbus, like with last year's MLS Cup champions. No, like huge European superstar. Well, Cucho is still a big deal, but not as big as other players you could probably think of. But it's stuff like this kind of turns people off to this team because they lack ambition, and I'm kind of tired of hearing that narrative, even though there were times where I have agreed with it. But Axel has always talked about being smart in the transfer window, just finding the right players for the team, not the first ones. And I'd be very surprised if they do choose the first route and sign another DP, though I would really like that. And we'll see if this is the right move or not. And things could change in the next few weeks. So the window closes on the 14th. And like Felipe said, last year, Adekugbe, Larea, they weren't signed until like the final day or two. So you might be pending, oh, it's quiet now. Why aren't there any rumors? Just wait, because it feels like they don't want to reveal anything or leak anything until the transfer is close to completion.
Yeah. And, there will always be rumors. I mean, Tom Bogert is always going to catch whiff of something. So you probably will hear about some things beforehand. But yeah, I mean, the transfer window is kind of long for a reason. It's like over a month long for a reason. And that's because, there are a lot of teams, it takes time to sign players. It's not like how it is in Football Manager or in FIFA where you do 2 kind of screens and you buy a player and it's over. You can do it in 30 seconds. It takes a lot of time. There's a lot of, especially in the MLS, especially, with visas and stuff like that, of buying international players. It's a whole process that is long and arduous. And I think that for the Whitecaps, they want to make sure things are done correctly and they find the profiles that work well. Because, I mean, if you look at the way that the Whitecaps play, they can't just bring anybody in. They have to be somebody that can fit into this highly complex, nuanced, systematic style of play. And so that's why it's even more tough to find the right profiles and bring the right players in. You can't be like a Nottingham Forest and just sign any random Joe that you can find that's half decent in football. Say, come to the team. Let's see if you stick. If not, you'll just hang out outside the training room since it's too small for all 44 players of you. So you gotta have understand the way that things work and the Whitecaps work. And yeah, there will be signings. Like I would be very surprised if we don't make at least one signing, but just don't hold your breath for a Marco Royce caliber kind of player coming in, because I severely doubt that that's the kind of player that we'll be bringing in.
Yeah, and I believe we'll see at least one or two signings. I got someone in my mentions the other day saying like, "Oh, they're not going to sign anyone. They're going to sign someone." I'm sure they're going to sign someone. I'll be very surprised if they don't, and I'm reserving judgment for what they do until the window is over. And I'm a little disappointed that it seems like the third DP spot won't be filled, but we'll see what happens. All right, Copa America is over, and Canada finished fourth in the tournament, which if you told us that like a month ago before the tournament started, we wouldn't have never believed you. Though they should have won this game against Uruguay. It went to penalties. And unfortunately, penalties, it's always random. Canada couldn't win out in the end.
No, really heartbreaking, honestly, the way that match went, because like you mentioned, they deserved better. They deserved to win. It was such a good performance. Like, I'll be honest, I've been watching Canada for years. I remember watching the match where they got smacked 8-0 by Honduras in like
8-1, yeah.
8-1 in our always forget the one. 8-1 against
No one
Honduras. I think it was like
remembers it.
2015. Yeah, nobody remembers that one. So like, I'm one that's been like being down in the trenches with this team, and I can honestly say that despite the last, like, if it wasn't for the last 3 minutes, that is probably one of the best performances I've ever seen a Canadian national team, men's Canadian national team, ever have, just because of how confident they were, how focused they were. That wasn't a team that was going to just sit and wait and defend deep and try to counterattack, and it was going to be cagey and it was going to be, sweaty and it was going to be nerve-wracking. No, that was a team that went out and wanted to win, wanted to take it to Uruguay, and wanted to show them and the rest of the world that they are a footballing nation. And that is exactly what they did. They did show a little bit of naivety and show that they still have room to grow to be able to actually get results across, because good performances don't always translate into good results. There's some added things there that you need to kind of learn, and that takes time and experience. And that's something that they will get from this tournament. But still, overall, it was such an impressive match, and it was a great way to cap off an impressive tournament where, yes, people will say, well, you only, up until the third place match, you only scored 2 goals. Fair. Goal scoring is a serious concern. There was a serious concern throughout the tournament, and it's something that Jesse Marsh will have to do, especially with, strikers like Jonathan David and Kyle Larin. They kind of have had their place sort of set, kind of like they can always, their name tag is always there. They can always show up. Maybe there has to be a little bit more ruthlessness, especially for Kyle Larin. But even regardless of the goal scoring, I mean, you look at the fact that, Canada kept 2 clean sheets against the likes of Peru and Chile. I mean, Chile won back-to-back Copas not that long ago. Peru are a very strong side, very physical, bloodthirsty at times side, and they managed to, get a win and get a draw against them. They managed to take a Venezuela side that had beat Ecuador and had gone from the group stage match with 9 points, which I got to say, as somebody that watched Copa America, never would have expected from Venezuela. Aside of Canada, they're probably one of the biggest surprises of the whole competition. But they took a really, really in-form Venezuela, were winning 1-0, arguably shouldn't have conceded that goal against Rondon because of referee things, but we won't jump into that too much again. But still beat them on penalties. It was an overall really impressive performance from Canada, and it really put them back on the map for the first time since 2022 when they came first. But I think even more now, because Copa America is a more global competition and stage compared to CONCACAF World Cup qualifying. So the fact that they also have Jesse Marsh, who's also a very recognizable name to fans of the Premier League and of of Europe, it only bodes well for what Canada are able to do, because this was by far and away better than any of us ever expected.
Yeah, it's clear they exceeded expectations. No one expected them to go this far. I mean, they played well in both those games against Argentina despite losing, and they went toe to toe with Uruguay, who are still one of the best teams in the world. Yes, goal scoring is an issue. We've talked about it time and time again, and good on Marsh for changing the formation up for the game against Uruguay with the four at the back and one striker up top. And maybe that's something that should be kept going forward, a 4-2-3-1, which is a formation I pretty much like to use in FIFA. And the big props to Ismail Kone. Didn't have the best start to the tournament, but against Uruguay had one of the best individual performance you'll see from a Canadian men's player like ever. That one beautiful goal, 75% passing accuracy, two interceptions, 10 passes in the final third, 9 out of 12 duels won. This guy is only going to get better, especially under Roberto De Zerbi at Olympique Marseille. And let's not forget, this guy was playing with CF Montreal not too long ago and with Saint Laurent in League One, Quebec. Goes to show how much importance there is, how much there needs to be more development of Canadian youth in this country, because there is talent. This tournament showed it with the likes of Schaffelberg, Bombito, Kone, and many others. And Marsh talked about this a few days ago, that it's kind of criminal that Bombito wasn't discovered until he was 23 and not when he was 15 or 16. And he stressed that there needs to be better scouting, better talent evaluation for players under the age of 18 or 19. It's kind of like what Alphonso Davies, Jonathan David became. Because if you want to grow the game, if you want to grow the strength of the national team, it starts when they are teenagers playing in God knows where. Like CPL, MLS Next Pro, university even. Like, there is talent in this country for soccer. We're not just hockey. Like, kids are playing soccer more than ever. And you never know. One of these kids could be a future Canadian men's national team player.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think he's correct in sort of calling that out. I mean, it's sort of the same thing all across North America, where it's that kind of difference where, obviously, outside of soccer, you want to be able to go to college or university, get a degree, because you never know what life might get you. But if you're really serious about your soccer career, as North America wants their young, talented prospects to be, you go in the route that European teams have, where you see, players at 16, 17, 18 years old be tried and tested against players much their senior that have played professional soccer for a while, so that they can sort of, earn their stripes and understand what it is to play against actual men at the top level. And it's something that I think is being missing a lot from North American sports, and specifically North American soccer. And that's why they're a little bit behind, where we see a 22 or 23-year-old as young because they're fresh out of college, they're ready to start their professional career. Well, in Europe, you see a 16-year-old, just turned 17-year-old, win the European Championship with his national side. There's where you see the difference of, wait a minute, maybe we're wrong about this. And I think that's what Marsh is pointing out, is that you can't just allow young players to be like, oh, they're just kids, let them just kind of play around and not actually pay attention to them until they're in college. That's where their actual professional development will be, when they're in college. That's when we'll train them to be professionals. No, start them young. I'm not saying throw 16-year-olds into the deep end, because that could be very, very dangerous as well for them. But I'm saying, put the steps in place so that when 16, 17, 18-year-olds have the talent and the quality to play at a top level, grant them the opportunity. That's why I really like with the CPL right now, they have the exceptional young talent rule, which is when, the CPL teams find a young lad that might be 16, 17, 18 years old. that is really, really good, they can give them an exceptional young talent developmental contract. They come in, become basically a pro with them, and get to play against their teammates, every day in training, and get to play against these really good teams week in and week out. You see stories like TJ Taheed and James Cameron, Cavan Tavernier. Like, these are players, and now they're getting opportunities at the national team level, or the under 20 national team level, and under 17 national team level, because they're actually playing against men. They're not in academies, and like other young players, so they have more experience than some of these other players, and that's what you want to give them. So I really like that Jesse Marsh kind of came out and said that, because it's true. If you would have seen the raw qualities that a Moise Bombito could have had at 18, imagine what he would be like now at this point. Like, he wouldn't be in the conversation of, oh, will he earn a move to Europe? He'd already be in Europe, and he'd probably be in the conversation of which top 5 league is he going to go into. If he's not already in there, what top team is he going to go to? I think that's the important part of this whole conversation, is that you need to be able to identify these talents, and that takes resources. That takes a lot of time and resources too. You need to put money into scouts, into analysts, into the people that actually can look at players and be like, this guy's got something about him, even though he's 17, 18, and actually put them in positions where they can influence bigger teams and people that have soccer influence, to sign these players and develop them. Say, this kid's got something. You got to take a look at him. You got to sign him up, because that's where it all begins.
Yeah. And I know Alfonso Davies was an outlier because of his skill, and not every player is going to develop like him, but the Whitecaps gave him the opportunity to come from Edmonton to play in their academy. And had that's just it. Opportunity just isn't there for some players to play against men and elevate the game. The CPL, like you said, gives players like that opportunity. TJ Taheed and James Cameron are players you have to watch for the future. And like you said, it takes money, time, resources to scout and evaluate talent. And there are people better than me that are good at evaluating and writing about the under 20 teams, the under 18 teams. Like Alex Gonge-Rusick, for example, anyone at Northern Tribune, or whoever runs the Canucks at Home, Canucks Abroad Twitter account.
Brandon Q.
Yeah, him. I mean, those guys know way more about a player playing in the 4th division of wherever that's like 17 years old, and a player playing for the Canadian under 18s than the average Joe like myself. And there needs to be more people like that. I like to do it, but don't have the time or the resources. But at least follow those accounts if you're a Canadian soccer fan. Follow Canucks at Home, follow Canucks at School, or Canucks Abroad, because you never know. The players they're tweeting about could be a future player for this national team. And I'm proud of Canada for what they accomplished at this tournament. But again, there's a long way to go. Lots more to be done before 2026. So the final happened, though the game isn't really the big story here, because what happened before the game takes the bigger spotlight.
Yeah, it wasn't a great look on anybody, really, was it? It was a disaster. Let's not beat around the bush. It was an absolute disaster from all perspectives, from a sporting perspective, from a safety perspective, from an organizational perspective. It was a disaster, and it could have been avoided. And that's the thing, the more frustrating part. It could have been avoided. And, there are multiple parties involved that are all sort of blaming each other, which makes it worse because no one's taking responsibility. They're all blaming each other, between the police department, the Hard Rock Stadium, Common Ball, U.S. Soccer. They're all pointing fingers at each other. But the truth of the matter is they're all at fault to some degree. Maybe more, some more than others. And I'm not going to dish out specifically, the shares of blame, but there are more people parties that are more to blame than others, but it was avoidable. It's not like this is the first time a major event like this has happened in the world. There are lessons that you can learn from other places. I mean, the Euro final from a few years ago, the 2021 Euro, the 2020 Euro that became 2021 Euro, that
Yep,
was a disaster too.
Champions League final in 2022.
Yeah,
Pretty
that was
similar.
another one. Exactly. Where it's like, you have examples of history of these major events, what not to do. But it felt like the powers that be didn't really care to learn from those, and there's always that saying, those that forget history are doomed to rewrite them. That's exactly what happened in this game, where it became a disaster from an organizational point of view, where fans started to break in, started to crowd. There was risks of stampedes, of trampling people, and it was hot. It was hot in Miami. It was like 30 something degrees, almost 40, I believe. There was like heat warnings, and people were being like basically pushed into each other. Like, many people passed out. I think I would have passed out. I'm not good with heat, even though I'm Colombian. I think I
Same
would
with
have.
me.
I would have fainted in those regards too. But yeah, it was inhumane. And when you have people like that in those kind of dire circumstances, the worst part of them is going to come out. And you're going to see people start to panic and do whatever they can to survive. That animalistic side comes out, and you see the horror scenes that we saw, from the photos and the videos that were, horrific. And it's something that could have and should have been avoided just by adding extra perimeters, just by adding a bit more personnel outside of the actual stadium, because you should, expect that so many people are going to come to the game, especially considering that what are the two teams in this entire tournament that have drawn the biggest crowds? Argentina and Colombia. You put them in a game against each other at the magnitude like a Copa America final, you're going to have hundreds of thousands of people at your doorstep. And it felt like they were completely oblivious to that very obvious fact. And it felt like they were like, no, 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 it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Evidently, it wasn't fine.
Yeah,
Evidently, it was a disaster.
it was not fine at all. And someone on Twitter said that it reminded them of the Hillsborough disaster
It
from
could
the
have been.
80s. It could
It
have
could have
been.
very well been. That's the miracle of the whole thing, is that no one died from it,
People
to
were
my
injured.
knowledge. People were obviously injured, but like no one died. There wasn't a mass casualty. That could have been. It could have been Hillsborough. I mean, at one point, security was just like anybody in, so anybody could have brought in a weapon, could have brought in a gun. It could have been a shooting. It could have been a massacre. They could have shot players on the pitch. It could have been an absolute disaster beyond what it already was. Thank God it wasn't.
Like, and let's not forget.
That's the biggest lesson, is that it wasn't. They have to learn from it, or else they might not be so lucky the second time.
Yeah, and like for me, I don't understand why anyone would try to rush into an event they don't have a ticket for. But there are always people out there, and from what I've read, like in South America, there are places where they have tickets scanned multiple times, including one a bit further from the stadium just for extra security measure. And I don't know why the people organizing this event weren't aware that these are two of the most fanatic football nations in the final, and weren't aware that there would be chaos. And there was chaos. Like, kids were getting separated from their parents. People with actual tickets couldn't get in. Some, even media members with credentials, were not allowed in. And let's not
Yeah.
forget, this is one of the host stadiums for the World Cup in 2 years. So not a good look on that either. And some people were even trying to get in through the vents, which is absolutely insane.
Yeah. But I think it's a lot of people kind of not understanding the level of passion that South American fans have, especially, I have greater criticisms on Copa America. As much as it was a fun watch and everything, I have greater criticisms on Copa America because of how exploitative it is towards South Americans in this competition, because of how expensive ticket prices are. I mean, some tickets were going for more than what an average annual wage is for some of the people from these countries back in their home countries. How are you expecting, these people that, again, football at its base is a game for the poor. It's a game that is not too expensive to play. All you need is a ball, or something resembling a ball, and create 2 goals, and you have the sport. It's something that is created by and for the working class and the lower working class. And so when you get a competition that is so catered to the wealthy, you're going to have people get frustrated. And when it means to go see, especially as a Colombian, Colombia hasn't been in the final in 23 years. We've only ever won the Copa America once. When it means to go see your country be able to potentially lift one of the biggest trophies that they can possibly lift, you will do anything to go see that. And if you're priced out because, tickets are $1,600 minimum, what are you expected to do? And that's the thing that I don't think a lot of people were realizing from this competition, at what lengths these people were willing to go to support their national teams. I drove over 3,500 kilometers to go see Colombia in a group stage match against Brazil. Me and my cousin drove 18 hours there and back.
Whew.
And that's the minimum that people are willing to do to go see their country. So like, I think that it was just a lack of really understanding the culture and the depth of the passion that South American fans have for their countries, especially in such a historic and hallowed competition like Copa America. And I think that's where the root of the issue kind of lies, is that it's just a categorical misunderstanding of what this means to Latin Americans.
Yeah, and this is a big lesson for not just the World Cup in 2026, but any major football or sporting or even just a concert, big type of event. Like, this is what should not happen, and this is what people should learn for. And Marcel Bielsa and Jesse Marsh were both very critical of the way the tournament was organized, and that just proved both their points. But the actual game itself, Argentina ended up winning 1-0. Of course, Lautaro Martinez scored the extra time winner because it just felt inevitable. So Colombia, I think they put up a good fight. They put up a good fight the whole tournament. I mean, you're Colombian, Felipe, so you're going to let you have the floor on your perspective here, but you couldn't be more proud of the way your team went through this tournament.
Yeah, no, I really can't. I mean, obviously it hurt. It hurt a lot when Colombia lost that final. But I kind of knew towards the end that that's the result, that it was gonna, like, that's how it was gonna go, because I had sort of laid out the plan in my head of how Colombia could win this thing, this final against Argentina, because Argentina's biggest strength beyond their savvy gamesmanship is their depth. When you bring on Lautaro Martinez, top goal scorer of Serie A last season, who's worth 80 plus million euros off the bench, that is a luxury that not many teams have. And Colombia does not have that luxury. I think that on form right now, Colombia's first team against Argentina's first team, they're right level. And it was going to be on a knife's edge the entire match. That's what it was. Like, nobody wanted to make the first mistake. They were all very, very, very kind of cautious. They were kind of a little bit testy. They were trying to find an edge while also not giving the edge to the other team. It was very, very kind of like walking on eggshells almost, because of the severity of the situation, what was at stake and everything in the opening, 60 to 90 minutes. But I thought that's where Colombia had to win. Colombia, for me, the perfect scenario would have been Colombia within half an hour scores a goal off a set piece, because that's where they're most dangerous, and that's the great leveler. It doesn't matter who you're playing against. If you can get a chance at a set piece, you can score. Then defend for up until the 80th, 85th minute, counterattack, get a second goal, win the match. That was, for me, the game plan. When that didn't go through, when Colombia were not able to score in 90 minutes, and as soon as it went to extra time, I had that sort of internal dread of, I know which way this is going, because as soon as Argentina were bringing on the likes of Lautaro Martinez, Giovanni Lo Celso, Leandro Paredes, players that are worth, tens of millions of dollars, that are playing at the top level in Europe, there was only going to be one winner. Colombia don't have that luxury. Colombia are bringing in up-and-coming players from Brazil, from Argentina, from Colombia, from Russia. They have really good fight, really great spirit, but they just don't have that quality that Argentina have. So I was not surprised to see the game finish out in that regard, but I am still so proud of what Colombia were able to do. And they were, I think they were everyone's second team in that tournament based on the way that they were playing with spirit, they were playing with fight, with determination. James Rodriguez was the best player by far in that tournament. He was
Easily.
rolling back the years in this tournament and gave a lot of people joy. And at the end of the day, this might seem like I'm coping here, and I might very well be. But at the end of the day, that's sort of what it's all about, is entertaining, about showing up and giving something to cheer for. Maybe, obviously trophies are nice. And as a Spurs fan, I will never dissuade trophies as being something that you should want, because it's something that keeps evading. But if it's also about doing your country proud and showing the world that you can play football. And I think that's what Colombia did, and so I'm so proud of them, everything they were able to do. It's just one of those things that sometimes football is cruel in some regards, and had some opportunities gone a different way, Colombia might have been able to win that thing, but in the end they didn't. And so now it's about building on it for 2026, and that's the next goal. And I'm so excited to see what direction Colombia are going to go, and especially with Nestor Lorenzo and the kind of fraternity, that brotherhood that he's being able to curate, because going 28 games unbeaten is not a lucky feat for anybody.
Yeah, pretty much well said there. And yeah, Colombia were a dark horse heading into the tournament and made it all the way to the final. And really just beautiful to watch James Rodriguez roll back the years. Kind of forgotten ever since he left Europe. Obviously, it never really worked out in Europe. Now he plays in Brazil. But when that man puts on his country's jersey, he looks world class. And yeah, he turned it back to 2014 and frankly had a better tournament than 2014.
I agree. I think that was
And
his best ever performance, just in general, across his career. I think that was his peak.
there was more controversy because Argentina on their bus apparently sang some derogatory chant against France and players coming in from France, from Africa, and all those places. Enzo Fernandez broadcast it live. Everyone could see it. The whole world could see it. His Chelsea teammate Wesley Fofana pretty much called him out publicly on social media. But I'll say this quickly here. I don't think Enzo had bad intentions, but he made a huge mistake. And he's taking the big fall here because he's the one that filmed it himself. Though there were others like Julian Alvarez and many Alexis McAllister in the background. And I don't know why Messi's being forced to apologize. He wasn't even there. He's dealing with an injury right now. And he's looking like he'll be out for a while for Inter Miami. But even though it happened with Argentina, there's an internal investigation at Chelsea. Enzo did apologize. It was pretty much the apology you expected. But I think he needs to, learn and grow that, and show people that he isn't the person that he made himself out to be in that live stream. And then things get even crazier with France. The Federation is threatening to take the Argentinian Federation to court all over this. So the whole situation is pretty messed up. And
yeah.
I'll admit I did lose respect for Enzo Fernandez. I mean, I still like him as a player, but as a person, it's you see him in a different light. It goes to show that one wrong move can really change your perspective on not just a footballer, but on a person.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of thing when you're a public figure, whether you want to be one or not, you are. When you are a famous footballer, you have to be careful because you kind of are thrust into this realm of idolization, and any wrong step that you take will be worsened 10 times, because of the matter of your position. And so, whether or not Enzo Fernandez did or did not mean well means nothing at this point. Is the fact that he filmed it, which I don't understand why he would do it in the first place. Like, if you're gonna make those chants, have a little bit of foresight to not record it and have it live streamed to the world. That was the most incredulous part to me. but also just it's the fact that you did it. Now you got to take accountability for it and do the right steps. I mean, he made an apology. Was it a kind of a forced apology? Probably. I don't think
Oh,
he would
definitely.
make that
Yeah.
apology if he wasn't being witch hunted for it. But the fact of the matter is, you can't do those things. You simply cannot in this day and age. You cannot sing chants like this. You can't, even if I've seen Argentinians be like, it's not racist. It's just pointing out the facts. It
It
doesn't
doesn't matter
matter.
these
It's
days.
exactly because what the chant is projecting is saying that these French players aren't actually French. They're African. When if you actually I saw a post, when you look at it from the 23-man squad, only 3 of the players were not born in France. It doesn't matter what their parents are. They were born in France. They're French. And even if
Yeah.
they weren't born in France, they moved here, they got citizenship, they're French. It's the same thing in Canada. It's the same thing anywhere. It's like once you've moved here, once you've, emigrated here and you've adopted the identity of the place that you are a part of, you are Canadian or French or German or whatever it is. It makes no sense to be like, oh, but you're not like authentically French. You're not like your history isn't all white of French and everything. It doesn't
It
matter
doesn't matter.
at the end of the day. And that's why it's so frustrating to see this. And like Argentinians, I have my own opinions about Argentinians in general. I'm not surprised by these chants. I'm not surprised by the defense of the fans because, all I'm going to say is it's no surprise that there are no black players on the Argentinian national team. And the more you look into that, I'll just leave that there. The more you look into that, the more you understand. So
Yeah.
it's disappointing, not surprising, but still disappointing. And it makes it a little bit more frustrating that Colombia didn't win because now it's like people are like, oh, the racist one, which, it's maybe too general of a statement, but at the same time, it's kind of like, yeah, maybe we'd kind of let the wrong team win if that's how they're going to celebrate and everything. But yeah, I cannot the absolute mess that's come from it with the vice president of Argentina getting involved and everything. It's so ugly now. And yeah, Enzo Fernandez and a lot of the other players are gonna have to deal with it. And hopefully it's a lesson to them that at the very least they're more careful and at the very most they kind of are able to reflect and be like, maybe the way that we're going about this kind of topic isn't the greatest, and maybe I have some unlearning, which is what I'm hoping happens, but I'm not going to hold my breath over it.
Yeah. And big applause to Wesley Fofana for calling him out. Like, you don't,
Mm.
someone said on Twitter that whether it's a burner account with like 3 followers and a gray avatar, he's doing something that takes guts. Like, he's calling out a colleague, someone close to him, maybe even a friend. I don't know if they were close or not. And I know racism will it won't go away just like that, but that's the steps it takes to push it out of the game and in our society. So props to Wesley Fofana, and be interesting to see how Enzo deals with Fofana, Nkunku, Gusto, Uguchukwu, Disasi, and all the other French players at Chelsea. Which, by the
He
way,
also chose the worst because there's so many black French players at his club too. It's like you could have not gone about this in a worse way.
yeah, and then it's a club with a great history of black French players. So that makes
Literally,
things
I remember
even.
Flora Maluda,
Oh yeah,
N'Golo Kante. Like it's
and
yeah.
Michael Ealy, yep, all those guys. So one last thing here: the Euros ended, and it's not coming home. I got the score exactly right last week. So if anyone bet the score, thanks to my prediction, you're welcome. I probably should have. I probably would have been rich right now. But Spain beat England 2-1 in the final. First half, I thought both teams were playing it safe. It looked like a chess match. Nobody wanted to make a mistake. And it felt like the first team that would make a mistake would lose the game, and that's exactly what happened. And Spain struck first, thanks to one of the golden boys of the tournament, Nico Williams. From, of course, Lamine Yamal. Kyle Walker gets lost again, and Williams pounces on it, but not before Cole Palmer ties the game. Again, Gareth Southgate, I don't know what he had against this guy, but 3 minutes in, he ties the game. Just 3 minutes.
It's yeah. I mean, it goes to show like Cole Palmer is that guy. Like he is he is such a big stage player, even though it doesn't look like it. But he just I don't know if it's because of being raised in the Man City environment and everything, but it just like the occasion doesn't phase him. He had
Yeah,
the pass to Ollie Watkins on the equalizer, or on the winner against Netherlands, the game before, and then in this one he has a really good equalizer 3 minutes in. Like he's just in there to do his job, and he's so talented that he gets it done. And I think as great as it was for England in that moment, it kind of was a little another little dagger to Southgate, who's now left, but a dagger to
yeah,
Southgate,
more
being
of
like,
him.
why am I not starting? I could have done this from the first minute instead of waiting until we were already down a goal. But yeah, really, really great goal from Cole Palmer, and that first goal from Spain, literally the two most exciting players of the tournament, Lamine Yamal and Nico
And Nico
Williams.
Williams.
They're so good together and they're so fun to watch. They embody like just the joy and excitement of football right now in this modern age, that it's just so lovely to watch them go together. And yeah, it's awesome that they're friends too. I love watching the clips of them together, the little dancing and joking around and everything. But yeah, just fantastic to see them link up, and both of them, what amazing players that they are for their country, and deserved winners. I mean, if you beat, Germany, France, and England, you deserve to win the competition.
Yeah, they were the better team throughout the game and the whole tournament. And the winning goal, I mean, that's what you get if you stop attacking if you're England. Because after Palmer scored, they stopped attacking. That's the thing that frustrated everyone about England in general, that once they scored, they just decide to stop attacking. And then Mark Cucurella with the assist, another Chelsea player, for a substitute, Mikel Oyarzabal in the 86th minute. Turned out to be the dagger, but not before another exciting player of the tournament, Danny Olmo, makes a goal line clearance, and Spain fourth Euro. And you and I remember the days of Xavi, Iniesta, Fabregas, Torres quite well. We're witnessing a new generation of Spain, and they're following their idols' footsteps as we speak.
Yeah. And I think what's more impressive about this team, like don't get me wrong, that the 2008 2012 period for me is still the greatest international team I've ever had the privilege of watching. But it was sort of expected at that point because of how dominant Barcelona and Real Madrid were, right? That was like their
Right.
peak as well. So you kind of understood like Spain were more than likely going to win the tournaments, and they did. But this time around, they were not the favorites. They were like fourth or fifth in the
Yep.
in the in the in the bookies list, behind the likes of host country Germany, England, France.
France. Yeah.
Like they were not pipped to win, and they didn't really come in with all that much hype. A lot of people are saying this was one of the weakest Spain squads in recent history because it's the age of Busquets, Iniesta, and Xavi have passed. Have they been replaced? You don't have Sergio Ramos or Piqué anymore. You have now Laporte and Lenormand, and you don't have Casillas or even De Gea. You kind of like, is this really like a good Spain squad? Yes,
It is.
and plain and
It
simple,
was.
it was. Because De La Fuente knew how to get the best out of them, and brought them a new kind of identity. It's still that kind of classic Spain tiki taka, but it has a lot more energy. It has a lot more dynamism. It has a lot more ability for freedom, especially for their wide players who are the most dangerous throughout the tournament. So I think it's even more of an impressive achievement than when Spain won in 2008 or 2010 or 2012, because no one was expecting it. And now they've really announced themselves at the world on the world stage, and they're going to be a force to be reckoned with because so many of their players are so young and they have so much room to grow into even more of a world beater.
Yeah, and tiki taka was always part of the Spain identity. Like in Euro 2012, if you remember, it was keep the ball and just do not do anything with it. Kind of was boring. But this time around, keep the ball but be more free. Like you could see Spain were trying to be more creative, even when they were having the lead, and they kept the identity of the past but injected something new. That's what makes to me this Spain team more impressive. They look back, but they look forward at the same time, and they proved all their doubters wrong. Like Mark Cucurella proved Gary Neville wrong, and
I think Mark Cucurella proved pretty much everybody
he proved me wrong.
wrong. Yeah, because everyone was like, "Why is Grimaldo not starting? He just had an undefeated season with Leverkusen." And freaking Sideshow Bob is starting. Well, Sideshow Bob
Sideshow
became Main
Bob,
Show Bob.
yeah, left back of the tournament by far. And as for England, Southgate has left, which kind of was expected since they didn't win. For me, a few years too late because it was clear that his tactics, his style were stale. No more Harry Kane dropping back to play like a center back. No more players out of positions, I assume. No more Trippier on the left wing or Trent in the midfield. But as inept as Southgate was, he was the most successful England manager since 1966. World Cup semifinal, World Cup quarterfinal, 2 back-to-back Euro finals. And let's not forget, when he took over, England lost to Iceland at Euro 2016. They were in the trenches. They're better now, but Southgate took them from A to B. They need someone to take them from B to C, and they've been linked to Thomas Tuchel, Maurizio Pochettino, Frank Lampard, Graham Potter, a lot of former Chelsea managers, and it'll be interesting to see who is Southgate's successor.
Yeah, I think that it's gonna be tough now for them because Southgate made some infuriating decisions throughout his time in the tournaments, and he did bring them to semi World Cup semifinal and 2 Euro finals. You can't take that away from him. You can look at the runs and say maybe they got it a little bit easier than others, and I think that is true and has some weight to it. I mean, when your first major test really at England in this Euro was Netherlands in the semifinal, you kind of had it a little bit easy, but still did really well. I think the biggest thing that Southgate did was bring back that kind of camaraderie between the players, where before, like, you hear the stories of like in 2008, 2006, 2004, where the club rivalries kind of superseded the allegiance to the national team, and you have the Chelsea players in one corner and the United players in the other corner. No, not everyone isn't friends with everyone. It doesn't matter if you're City, United, Arsenal, Tottenham. It doesn't really matter. You're a group and you're friends, and you keep playing together and you keep developing together. So I think that's the best thing that Southgate was able to do, is kind of repair that kind of social aspect to the team. But yeah, the tactical side of it, he was playing like it was Burnley, under Sean Dyche, when you have actual world-beating superstars on your team. Felt like still kind of a way. So I think they need to bring in a manager that is able to work with superstars and make them click. And I think they need a system manager that is able to really focus on getting the best out of the players without making them clash too much. And that'll be the biggest challenge for them moving forward.
Yeah. Find someone that has tactical identity but can keep players together. To me, that sounds like Thomas Tuchel.
Yeah.
And
I think he would be the natural replacement, honestly. Sometimes he can kind of fall out in favor with players and with teams, as he's shown before, because he's so demanding. But I think, and if you want a tactical manager that can get the best out of players, there's few better right now in the market than Thomas Tuchel.
Yeah, and we'll see where England go next. So that concludes this week's episode. Not sure if you saw, not live on Twitter, because Elon Musk decided that you need to be premium to go live on Twitter.
Oh, really?
So, which is absolutely infuriating. And I did not know this until just now. Thanks, Elon. But follow me on Twitter, Joshua00. Nathan is at FelipeV_FC. Just fitting. Follow his coverage for Whitecaps, Canada, and CPL, which, by the way, Vancouver FC are playing today in Langley against York United, looking to bounce back after getting thrashed by
They're playing tomorrow.
Ottawa. Oh, tomorrow.
Tomorrow at 3 p.m.
Yeah. Thought it was today. Weird. So Nathan will be back next week. Follow me on the podcast at Terminal City FC. Check out Facebook page, Instagram page. Probably should start posting more on there. And we'll be back talking all things Whitecaps and more next week. Felipe, thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
And peace out.